Today we're going to be taking a look at the Elgato Wave Desk Stand versus the Rode DS2. Currently, the Elgato Wave Desk Stand does come in at $59.99, whereas the Rode DS2 does come in at $90. $60 for a premium desk stand does feel appropriate. It's nothing to sneeze at, though. $60 isn't nothing, but $90, I mean, I'm having a full-on allergy attack. When I reviewed the Rode DS2, my biggest knock on it was the price. And people in the comments did seem to agree that it was overpriced. However, I did feel like it was worth the money. But the build quality of the DS2 is really incredible, and it honestly could hold way more weight than it even stated. But here's where I feel like I differ from a lot of people, and I know that some people do agree with me, but I'm not like a big fan of the traditional boom arm. Personally, I prefer premium desk stands or low-profile arms. So I think that a lot of people were looking at the desk stand as a cheaper alternative to the boom arm, where it still technically is. The PSA 1 Plus is like $129, but it's not as big of a difference as some people would hope. But there are definitely people out there, like me, that just don't like boom arms. And that's where the DS2 and the Wave Desk Stand come in. So today I'm going to take you through the Elgato Wave Desk Stand versus the Rode DS2, and we'll just see which one is better. The Rode DS2 will come in two separate parts. It will come with two screws for you to put together, and the exact same thing goes for the Elgato. But each of these will come with the correct Allen key for you to put them together. Additionally, the DS2 does come with a 3/8 to 1/4 inch adapter, so you can put things like cameras, webcams on it. But the Elgato, on the other hand, the permanent mount that it has is a 1/4-20. So to accommodate that, Elgato has included two adapters, a 1/4-20 to 3/8 and a 1/4-20 to 5/8. Additionally, the Elgato does come with 4 rubberized cable ties that are actually really nice. Now, some of the comments in the Rode DS2 review that I did mentioned the lack of cable management, and you definitely can't argue with that. For a USB mic, it would be fine. It would just snake right through that hole. But any XLR cable just won't fit. And I think that is one thing that Elgato did consider. I think they were like, do we want to make bigger holes, essentially, than the DS2, or do we just not want to make any? And include some pretty sweet cable ties that don't have insane marketing all over them. So when it comes to any kind of device or microphone that you could put on the Elgato desk stand, I think that it wins in the cable management department, whereas the DS2 is pretty cool when it comes to webcams and USB mics, but not so much XLR mics. Now, when it comes to build quality and first impressions, I've got to say that both of these are absolutely incredible. I will say that I do give a slight edge to the Elgato's base. The Elgato just feels more secure on the desk. Like, regardless of microphone that I'm using, it just feels like it's just glued to the desk. Whereas the Rode DS2 is a little bit more position dependent, but it is also still very solid. Now, the Elgato's base is very heavy, but I do think that the part that faces up is actually made of plastic, where you won't find any plastic on the Rode DS2. And I know this is going to sound a little bit dumb, but from a design standpoint, the Rode DS2, in my opinion, wins all day. But practically speaking and financially speaking, I would say that the Elgato is damn near identical to the build quality of the DS2. And speaking of practicality, the one thing that the Elgato does have that the Rode doesn't have is a fully articulating head. Is that the right word for that? Regardless, it moves all the way around in a 360-degree articulation. And one thing to note is that the Elgato does have a little bit more reach on it. It is slightly taller, but I mean, it's like maybe a little bit more than an inch. You know the saying, give a microphone stand an inch and they'll take a mile. I don't know. Another important element of these stands is how much weight can each of them handle. Now, I feel like Elgato did this just as a slap in the face to Rode. But the Rode capacity is 950 grams, which is 2.1 pounds, and the Elgato is 2.2 pounds.
Now, I was able to get the Rode to handle way more weight than that last time, so I assume the same will be true for the Elgato, but we'll test that out shortly.
But each of these are very similar, so I'm just going to put random setups on it and just see which one holds better. So right here I have the Elgato Wave Desk Stand and the Rode DS2, both holding an SM7B. Right now they are both in their tallest position. For the Elgato, from the desk up to the top of the adapter is 16.25 inch, and for the DS2 it's flat 15 inches. So you have a little over an inch more reach with the Elgato. Right now I have this little portable desk thing set to the exact height of my normal desk, so I feel like this is about where a desk would land on most people. So when I was talking into the SM7B earlier in this video, this is roughly how I had it set up. And for the Elgato Wave Desk Stand, I would say this is a relatively effortless position for it to be in. And the same goes for the Rode DS2. Even with a microphone that is as heavy as the SM7B, fully extended past the base, this is fine for both the Elgato and the DS2, which I think is pretty impressive. I did plug an XLR cable into both of them just to have it be as fair and realistic as possible. But the reason that I am showing this angle is because I feel like it's a very popular angle. And if it can do this, it should be able to do a lot of other stuff. When I adjust the SM7B with the DS2, it kind of wants to tip. It does make sense because it is essentially over the stand and everything. Now with the Elgato, I will say it just doesn't want to tip in this position. It's just totally fine. And that really comes down to two different things. I would say this design where it comes out a little bit and then goes back in helps, and also just the size and the weight of the base. I mean, the DS2's footprint really isn't that much smaller than the Elgato, but it definitely is enough to make a difference. But the shape of the base is different. It goes up a little bit higher from the desk, and overall is just better when it comes to tipping. Let's go ahead and move on to some different setups. Now this next microphone that I'm going to test out is the King Bee Mark II, and it actually weighs like 1 ounce more than the original King Bee, which I thought was kind of insane. Now the DS2 has already held the King Bee Mark II in my previous video. We'll see if it is struggling now that it has a little bit of wear on it, or if it's even stronger. And here is the King Bee II on the Rode DS2, and it's handling it perfectly. And honestly, even if I do pull down at the King Bee, it just falls back into place. It's great. Here is the King Bee II on the Elgato Wave Desk Stand, and I gotta say, it feels very solid, very secure. I would even say more secure than the DS2, which does feel weird to say because there's never been anything that I've thrown at the DS2 that it hasn't been able to handle. I even threw like a ridiculous camera setup at the DS2 the last video that I made, and it was totally fine. But once again, this does feel even more solid than the DS2. Now that is one thing that I do want to clear up is the DS2's design is better, and by that I mean the look. Like it looks just solid, it looks better. But the design from a practical standpoint does make a bit more sense on the Elgato Wave, but let's just keep throwing stuff at it, why not? Now, let's do a real test. What do you say? This right here is the Blackmagic 6K G2 with a little T7 1TB SSD, a little external monitor, a handle, and a cage, and it weighs pretty much exactly 7 pounds. And I love this setup. I use it all the time. So needless to say, I'm a little bit nervous about it. I feel like I have both of them in their strongest position. So I'm just going to double check the screws and let go of it. I'm going to let go. I'm going to let go now. It feels very secure on the Elgato. I'm kind of shocked right now. I mean, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't feel comfortable with it on there all day, but for 30 minutes, an hour, I don't really see a problem with it. Now it's time for the D2. I did do something similar to this in the last video, but I think that the setup was like 5 pounds. So this is like 2 pounds more. So I'm a little bit nervous.
for the D2, DS2, whatever. Here goes nothing. Oh. Okay. Yeah, that'll work. It does feel way less secure and is way more wiggly, as you can see, than the Elgato. But I mean, it holds it. And now this is in a little bit more of a compromised position. And I would say that both of their strength is just outstanding. Now for a much more practical and much more likely setup. Here's the ZV-1. It has like the little macro / wide angle extension on. And I'm currently using the Rode DS2 as an overhead rig. And it handles it perfectly. I mean, this camera is super light. I believe it's like 1.2 pounds. But just being able to put it in this position and everything, it's good. It works. And now I have the Elgato Wave Desk Stand achieving the same or similar overhead angle. But in my opinion, having the head that fully rotates up here is just a game changer, especially for cameras. Don't get me wrong, it is fantastic for microphones. In fact, I always put the triad orbit on the DS2 regardless. So in a way, when you purchase the Elgato, you kind of get a triad orbit with it, instead of having to buy a much more expensive DS2 stand and a rotatable head.
And for the most important test, I got the cats involved, obviously, and I sprinkled some catnip in front of the stands. And Billy right here is sniffing the Elgato pretty hard, and she sits down. So she picked the Elgato. Oh, wow, she is really proving it. You know, she really is happy with her decision. And now we have Penny up next, who's sniffing. Oh, wow, she just rubbed on the Rode. That is a clear-cut decision right there. Now we got Big Boy Grim in the house. And he is just immediately interested in the Elgato, and he picked the Elgato. So that is 2 points for the Elgato, 1 point for the Rode. And Billy just wanted to come congratulate Grim. Oh, wait, maybe bitch slap him. I don't know. Oh, Grim, come on, don't be a tattletale. And she is just really happy with that Elgato decision. I'm just telling you what. And now we have Blue, who could definitively choose a winner with the Elgato, but he's walking toward the Rode. Oh my goodness, he picked the Rode. It is tied 2-2, and I couldn't get Keela to participate, so we're just going to have to go with a tie on this one. Now I have the Shure MV7 Plus on the Elgato Wave Desk Stand, and I'm going to bump the desk, bump the stand, and just see how this stand does with desk noise and if it helps reduce desk noise. But also, I understand that the microphone has a lot to do with this, whether it's a shock mount, a hard mount, or anything like that. So I understand it's not a perfect test, but hopefully it's helpful. And I am going to test this with 2 separate microphones. Now, just for some clarification, I am going to hit the desk 4 times, and then I will switch to the DS2, hitting the desk 4 times, and then I will go same thing over and over again, but with the base of the mount, the lower arm, the higher arm. Hopefully that made sense, but if it didn't, just pay attention to what's on the screen right now. Now I'm going to do the exact same test, but with the FiFine K669D attached to the Elgato and then the DS2. Yes, I did pick this microphone because it is budget friendly, but most of all, I did it because it is awful at rejecting any vibrations from stands or anything. So pretty much if the Elgato or the Rode can make this microphone sound tolerable, it did a good job. Now I'm going to get into my review section of the Elgato Wave Desk Stand versus the Rode DS2. Now as far as the pros go for the Elgato Wave Desk Stand, I've got to say that the fully rotatable head is super nice to have. But then again, if you just get a relatively inexpensive camera ball head, you pretty much have it right there. So it's not like absolutely necessary, but it's nice. It is nice to have. Now, another pro, in my opinion, is the base of the Elgato, even though it isn't made of metal. The size, the weight, the shape of it is just very well thought out to make this stand not tip. Now, the next pro is going to seem a little bit silly, but it is the cable ties. They are really nice, and it's just nice that it comes with them. The Elgato doesn't have the holes that the DS2 has that are exclusively for USB cables, and as a person that usually uses XLR mics, I felt a little bit neglected by that. But this, I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad about it at all. Now, the final pro that I will specifically mention about the Elgato is the price, of course. For Elgato to come out with a desk stand that can hold up and compete against the DS2 for 2/3 of the price is great. Now let's go ahead and name some pros of the Rode DS2, and the first one is a bit weird, but go with me on it. It is the metal nut on top of the thread adapter. Now this might seem like I'm trying to find something good to say about the Rode, but I promise that's not it. But the metal nut is great, and that sounds so weird to say out loud, but it just really holds everything in place just so well, versus Elgato's plastic nut that just occasionally comes loose. So I guess it's fair to say that Rode does have better nuts. I'm a child. And with that being said, the Rode DS2's build quality in general is just better. Now, this next pro for the Rode definitely doesn't affect everyone, but I will say it is definitely a better choice for traveling. Now, I know it seems kind of bass-ackwards in that the Elgato would be the one to travel with. I mean, it is a smaller arm, but it's because of that little cutout and because of the base that it really isn't a better choice in that right. Now, this next pro is absolutely opinion-based. It has an asterisk next to it for sure, but I do like the look of the DS2 more than the Elgato. The Rode just looks good on camera. Now, we have the pros and the cons, but we also kind of have like a middle section where these stands both tie. But when it comes to desk noise, both of these have areas that they do perform very well in and areas that they don't perform well in. For instance, the DS2 would perform better when I would hit the actual desk and I would hit the base, but the Elgato would perform better when I would hit the lower part of the stand and the higher part of the stand. So these essentially tied 2-2 when it came to desk noise, which is the exact score of the cat choice when the cats tried to choose which desk stand they liked the most. A lot of tying in this review. But I will say I was expecting the exact opposite for the DS2 and the Elgato. I was thinking that the Elgato with its hefty base would perform better and that the DS2 would do better in the arm section, and it was exactly the opposite. Now let's go into some of the negatives. We'll go ahead and start with the Elgato. And the first negative is the wiggle that the Elgato has in the top section of the arm when the screw is undone. It's just a little concerning how much wiggle there is, especially when Rode doesn't have anything like that. Now, this next negative might just affect me because I am going to get carpal tunnel surgery like literally tomorrow. So by the time you watch this, I will have had it already. But sometimes it feels like the screws just can't be untightened. And the weird thing about that is that the arm will occasionally feel loose, like to the touch, but then these screws won't come undone very easy. It's kind of weird. Now, I will absolutely take some of the blame for this because my wrists and hands are just so weak right now, but I will say I've never had that issue with the DS2. So since I haven't had it happen with the DS2, I figured I would mention it. Now, I already kind of covered this in the pro section for the Rode, but it's the plastic nut up here. It's just not great how some stuff can become a little loose on it, but that's all. Now, the Rode negative are some of the Elgato positives, and I've kind of mentioned them already, so I'll just briefly go through it. But it is the no 360 rotatable head thing, no ball mount. Additionally, it is the cost of it. It's $90 compared to the $60 of the Elgato. Now, yet another thing that I already mentioned, and I feel like it's more of a pro for the Elgato than it is a negative for the Rode. But I have seen some other reviews and stuff out there where apparently the Rode is tippy. Like I said, I haven't personally had issues with that, but then again, I would use like a ball head or the triad orbit to kind of even the weight out a little bit on the stand. But based off of the pros and cons and what's been in this video, hopefully it helps you decide which stand could be right for you. I'm sure I missed something in the pros and cons section, but if I personally had to choose one of them and only one of them to use, that is difficult. Okay, I do think I would give a slight edge to the Elgato, and that is purely based off of price. Now, when I did the DS2 review, there weren't many premium desk stand options that were meant to be seen on camera that like looked good. I mean, there were a ton and still are a ton of kick drum mic stands that you could easily make work on your desk, but none that were just like meant for this. And now with the Elgato Wave Desk Stand option out there, it just creates competition. Competition is good. We like competition. I don't know why I said we like so creepily like Gollum. I don't know why I did that. That was weird. All I'm saying is that competition is a good thing. I doubt Rode has thought much about the price of the DS2 until the Elgato came out. Maybe they'll drop the price a little bit. That'd be great. But I will say the Elgato is just great for general use. So is the DS2. I mean, we have two amazing options, but I do think that for the price, it does have a slight edge on the DS2. But hypothetically, if the Rode stayed at $90, but it did get a fully rotatable head that was on par with the build quality of the Rode already, I mean, it would be a clear-cut winner in my eyes. So in that situation, I would pick the DS2, or if they lowered the price, $15, $20. But for now, I give the edge to the Elgato. But thank you all for watching this review / comparison of the Elgato and the Rode DS2. I hope it helped you out, helped you decide if you want to get one of these. Also, I do want to send a big thank you to Mr. Buccaneer, Uncle Buck himself, Tom Buck. He sent me this RE20, the black one. I love it. Thank you. Also, I want to give a big thank you to all the members of the audio hotline, and I'll see you audio nerds next time.